life, probably like a defining part of my personality. So yeah, that's me.
Excellent. And then we'll jump to what is Portal 2? What is Portal 2? Describe it for those who may have not played the game.
Sure. So Portal, there's two of them, there's Portal 1, Portal 2. I'm actually known more for working on Portal 1. I worked on Portal 2 a little bit at the beginning. But what is it? So it is a game, it's first person, so think like a first person shooter, except instead of shooting a gun, what you have is a portal gun. And what it is two interconnected portals. That you go in one and you come out the other. You can see in one and then see out the other. And you can move them around at will. And so the way the game is structured is it's a series of puzzles. And each room in this sort of labyrinthine maze controlled by a dubious AI is a self-contained puzzle where you have just this one tool to try to figure out how to get out of that room into the next room. So yeah, that's cool.
Excellent, and I'll jump in a little bit. We're going to kind of go on a journey. We're going to see where did Portal come from, some of your inspiration, and then we'll dive into some of the educational aspects of it and how did teachers start using this game. I'm actually going to keep that under wraps for a little bit, and we'll venture into that journey to talk about how teachers used it. So you began at DigiPen and then moved on to Valve and created Portal. Can you just share a little bit about your design instincts? Like, how did that journey from DigiPen to Valve lead to
At the time, they have a lot more programs now, but at the time, there were two. There was an art program that was an associate's degree, and there was what was called an RTIS degree, which is essentially a computer science degree with a specialization in computer graphics programming. So myself and some other guys were in this program together in RTIS. As part of the program, you have to create a game every year, basically from scratch. So you don't get to use like fancy game engine. It's like, no, you gotta code that sucker from the ground up. So as you may imagine, maybe just a little janky, the games that we made at the time. So we had been working together for 4 years, and going into our senior year, we were like, okay, well, what do we want to make together? We know we need to go and try and find jobs after we graduate, so we came up with this idea together of what will eventually become Portal. At the time it was called Neurobacular Drop. It had that look in one portal, out the other, you can move it around, solve puzzles type of thing going on. And then we created games during the course of a year, and then every year DigiPen has this job fair where they bring in local game developers to come in and check out student projects, interview students there to see if there might be a good fit for them and a role for their company. And a couple folks from Valve stopped by, took a look at Neurobacular Drop. They were like, hey, this is actually pretty neat. Do you want to come to Valve and show your project? And so we thought about it for a little while, and we were like, yeah, okay, let's do that. So we brought our game in, we were brought into the company, sat down in a conference room, and what we thought would just be like one dude maybe checking out our game, got in, like, they brought in like 20 different people, we were all like freaking out. Gabe Newell, who is the CEO of Valve, came in, we demoed the game, they were like, hey, this is pretty neat. Gabe asked, hey, what are you kids doing, after you graduate? We're like, I don't know, man, like trying to find a job, because student loans suck. And so he was like, all right, left, came back, and got us, and took us to another conference room, in the meantime we're done with the game, to other folks, and having people play. And then we were like offered jobs on the spot to come in and take this student project and turn it into something. When we first got hired, it was supposed to be a tech demo, and then over the course of a couple years, we kind of just kept having our timeline expand, and then it shipped with the orange box, and it was Portal.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about that, like timeline shifting, because I've heard you speak about developing the game and having to develop on a scarcity model, things being much shorter than you would have liked. Of course, everyone wants plenty of time, which I think is a lot of those of you, whether you're developing games or maybe you're an educator in the classroom and you're developing lesson plans very quickly, trying to figure out how you can best serve your students. How did that scarcity model actually help serve some of the things that made Portal what it is?
Yeah, so I mean, initially when we started the game, we were given a 6-month timeline to basically like make a tech demo, toss it on Steam, and cross your fingers. And you know, in retrospect, looking back, I think they were mostly doing that because we were a bunch of kids that they just hired off the street, literally, to come and make something. And so I think there was some amount of maybe skepticism that we could make something while we were there. And they found out, oh wow, these kids are doing it. So great, you've got more time. And so that happened a couple of times over the course of the development. And so for us, it was really important to design within the means that we had. So we were a small team. There were only 7 of us that worked on Portal 1. The Portal 2 team, I think, ended up being about 30 folks at the end of the day, if I'm not mistaken. Same with the Left 4 Deads. And so we had a small team. At the time, we thought we had 6 months. That 6 months became a year, and then that year then became 2 years at a certain point. But we knew we had not a lot to work with, and so rather than trying to blue sky everything, it was about making smart choices within the means that we had. So, for example, the IP that we built around Portal, you know, it lives within that Half-Life universe because we took assets from Half-Life 2 to go ahead and make Portal. And so we adapted what currently existed within the editor and the assets that we had, and were very deliberate about what we chose to make from scratch that became uniquely identifiable to Portal. But a lot of stuff we just reused what we had. And then as well, I think, you know, probably one of the more interesting things that came out of that constraint was Gladys, who is the AI. For most of the game, she uses disembodied voice. That was because we didn't think we would have time to make a Gladys model, and so we were like, we don't know what she looks like. She's a disembodied voice for now. And so, again, I'm a firm believer that I think the best design really actually comes out of constraint. I think if you speak to a lot of developers, you know, one of the traps for us is blue sky thinking, and that like, oh, we can do anything and everything. That's a trap. And all of us probably fall into that trap at one point or another, and then we come out of it where we just don't have much because we were too busy trying to like think and think and think, and kind of that you know, perfection is the enemy of good.
Yeah, I think that's a really great thing to consider, both for whether you're designing for an educational purpose or if you're working with students, and whether it's they're playing a game like Minecraft and creating, they can be their most creative when they have those constraints. And I think as adults sometimes, you know, we can be quick to give those to students, you know, okay, developmentally appropriate, let's scope this way. But as adults, we need that as well when we're thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, you know, everyone's like, oh, think outside the box. I'm the opposite. I actually like a box. The first thing that I do when I'm trying to design a game or trying to figure out a problem is like, oh, I need to make a box of constraints that will help me make smart decisions. And that box could be like, who's the audience that you're ultimately building this for? How much time do you have? You know, how many people do you have? All of these things should help inform the decisions about what you're building.
And then you can be strategic. Once you create your box to live in, then you can decide, this is where I'm going to break my box a little
Yeah,
bit.
absolutely.
Go out
Yeah.
and do something a little bit different. I think that's really helpful. So, And it's hard for us to see you all.
Yeah, the lights are very bright. I'm trying to
I'm gonna ask
fake make eye contact
for,
with people,
yes, a very aggressive wave, so maybe there's a chance we'll see you. Has anyone used Portal 2 with students? See a couple?
Cool.
Wave aggressively. Oh yeah! The aggressive waving really, really helps. Very nice. So, for those of you who are wondering, well, how could you use a game like Portal in a classroom? I've pulled a few lesson examples from, actually our sponsor, Foundry 10, did some phenomenal research with Portal 2 and actually has lessons posted. So if you're feeling inspired afterwards and want to see, hey, does this fit? They had 3 categories, math, physics, and English. Some of the physics options being, let me get it so I can read it here. Terminal velocity, conservation of momentum, man on the moon, getting faster as you fall. So a lot of different physics things and some complex things that you would want to model with students.
Makes sense.
So my initial question is, as you are a young game creator, did it ever pass your mind that teachers would go like, hey, that is a game that I want in my classroom with my students?
No, absolutely not. At no point. To be fair, though, I mean, at the time when we had made the game, and again, this was like over 15 years ago at this point, or I guess almost exactly 20, it'll be 20 next year?
Time flies.
Oh, I hate it. Time is a construct. So yeah, at the time, we figured like 20 people would play the game. So the idea that, someone would use it in their education curriculum is kind of wild.
Do you remember when you first started hearing that teachers were starting to use your game with students?
Yeah, I want to say it was probably about like 5 years or so-ish after Portal 1 came out. So my friend of mine, Mark DeLauro, was talking a bit about that. He used to work with the federal government, like thinking about ways for games to be there for educational purposes.
Very cool. All right, what do you think about Portal made it useful?
So I think what makes it useful for education, I mean, you listed off some of the reasons, like, hey, look, this is an interesting way to talk about, non-Euclidean geometry and utilizing, momentum, and let's talk about physics. But I think what is probably the most handy is the structure of the game, because it is a self-contained, like you go into a room, all of the tools are there for you as the problem solver. Like you don't have to think, oh, do I need to go back 3 rooms to go find this thing, to go bring this thing over here? It's like, no, everything that you have in this room right now will help you solve this problem. So it simplifies the problem space for folks, and I think that structure in and of itself is really useful from an education standpoint. And we designed it deliberately that way to teach players how to use this really weird tool.
And I know educators were able to create some of their own spaces as well. What were some of the features that allowed them to really customize?
Yeah, so in and of itself, a lot of games are moddable. So you can utilize the same engine that we use as game creators to make levels or alterations to the games themselves. So the game already sort of came with that out of the box, and to my knowledge, there were also some guardrails and things like that that were put on top of that moddable ability for Portal 2 to allow it to be a little bit more easily editable for kids.
Yeah, there have been a few games that were initially not designed for the classroom where they've created different versions that were still true to the game, like Minecraft Education, but have those additional safeguards, which are very important when we're creating a game that does need to go into the classroom. And that kind of brings me to a question. If you spend a lot of time in the educational game space, there's a big question of, is it better to design a game that would be great in the entertainment space that also happens to be educational, or is it better to design and focus in on that Do you have any thoughts of just advantages and disadvantages of either?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you are, so at the end of the day, like design as a space is just problem solving. And so when you're creating a game, one of the first things that you have to ask, or you should be asking yourself, is who is this game actually for? And what is the purpose of this? What is this trying to convey or communicate? And I think the design process that would ultimately go into something that is better for education, that audience and that point is going to be different than going into something for education. So Duolingo, for example, right? It's supposed to be an educational game that's supposed to teach you languages, but the way that they have optimized, and I use Duolingo every day, so they've optimized that not necessarily for the educational component, but for like, hey, I want you to continue to play this game over the course of years because you don't want to break your streak.
And on Monday, like, I'm almost at 365 and I'm really over
Yeah.
Duolingo and want to switch and I'm like, I have to make it to 365 before I switch to a new Duolingo.
Exactly, right. But it's optimizing you for not necessarily learning the material, but for completion of each unit,
Which,
right?
in my case, is not helping me learn Indonesian.
See, there you go, right? So I think, again, like, what is it being developed for? And what is the point of this thing? Like, I think coincidentally, Portal did well in an education space because the way that you have to think about games from an innovation perspective is that there's many like cliches and conventions that we as game designers rely upon that gamers just know. They know how to move their character around, they know how to move their camera, they know how to jump, right? So there's these conventions that we don't necessarily have to teach you. But when you start to introduce new things, because the concept of portals really did just break people's brains, we constructed it in such a way that it was just about the education and teaching of that particular mechanic, and only teaching you about that mechanic. So I designed for Portal 1, I designed the majority of the levels in the game, and there was a clear structure of, hey, I'm going to teach you a mechanic, I'm going to reinforce that mechanic with the next level that you play, and then the third level that you play is a logic leap, where I'm challenging you to take the things you learned and reinforce in the last couple of levels and apply it in a slightly different way that you have to think about so it sticks in your brain.
Sounds exactly what teachers are always trying to do.
Yeah.
The learning at school.
Yeah.
So some crossover there.
Absolutely. I mean, like, we were digging into psychology for how we were teaching that game, right? And so I think it just coincidentally worked really well.
And that's probably where that partnership of all the teachers that actually created lesson plans also did a similar thing. They took a nice existing structure where the game was easy for the students to learn because it had that progression, but then they were able to layer the same type of thinking to, say, bring velocity and allow them to experiment, but then it was really still on the teacher to do that bridge to help them pull out what they do in the game to the academic content that they're needing to learn. I think that's a big part of when we start thinking about using games in the classroom, that it's not just the game, it's also those pieces to pull out what's in the game to build that bridge of the learning transfer, if we want to get scientific about it, of how we do both of those. And I think that was one of the helpful things with Portal, is people were starting to publish what they were doing, how do you make that learning transfer, how can you do something that's really fun for students, but also that time is a value add to the learning.
Yeah, and I think, ultimately to circle back on the question in and of itself, I think the real answer is a Venn diagram between the two of them, right? Like, you have to create the game for what you're trying to teach and for the audience, but I think there's a lot of learning and conventions that, commercial game developers can bring to the equation to help things stick a little bit better, because we're constantly thinking about that as game designers.
Excellent. Well, we're approaching the end of our time.
All right.
So I'm going to give a final ending.
Okay.
and this is going to be a tricky two-part question because I like to give those.
All right, I'm ready.
I want to leave people with some advice.
Sure.
So I'm going to ask you two questions, but I'll ask them separate.
Okay.
So what do you think designers might misunderstand about the classroom? And then we're going to switch it. What do teachers misunderstand about games? So I'll let you start with the designer. What do designers misunderstand about the classroom?
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious, like, you were showing a bunch of things that, students had learned at the university of, like, hey, what are the things that are the design constraints that ultimately would be there for the classroom? I don't think I could answer it better than that because it's well researched and I'm super
Check out
curious.
our cards.
I know, right?
The no-go, no-go.
Advertisement.
Or go, no-go.
Yeah, yeah. Like I want to learn more. Like that looks really, really interesting. I think really, for us, it's at least for me, anyway. Speaking personally, I don't know what I don't know, right? Because I'm not an educator. I'm not a teacher, right? And so I think, if I were challenged to make a game within the space, the first thing I would do is go talk to teachers because I don't know, right?
Yeah, I think it's a great one to bring up. It's one of the reasons I love this event. Being someone who's run ed tech events in Seattle for years, teachers are the hardest to get to events. I know you're busy. We have a speaker on our panel who's really hoping to be here, but he had to take esports students here, drive them back, and is trying to get back. I don't know if he's here yet. Wave your hand if you are. So he may or may not make it. Teachers are busy. They're hard to get a hold of, and I think that's one of the challenges, especially if you are a small team. Getting access, there's also a lot of rules you have to follow with getting into a classroom.
Yeah,
so
that
it
makes
can
sense.
be tricky.
Yeah.
It can be a tricky user group to understand.
For sure.
Okay, so
Part two.
part two. What do you think teachers misunderstand about game design?
All right, so I'm just going to generalize because I think it's a common misconception for anybody that's not in the game industry, which is like, oh, you just must have so much fun playing games all day. And it's like, no, we don't. And in fact, the dark side of working in game development is that once you are there and you're like, oh, I'm going to play a game to relax in my downtime, it's not relaxing because you're going to play that game and you're going to pick at it, and analyze it to death. And so, really, I think it's game development is this really weird space where it's this intersection of creativity and technology. And then you also have the player input too as well. And so it's just a really wild problem space to parse on a daily basis. Game dev is real hard. And so I think, again, I'm just generalizing people because that's usually the first question that I get talking when people are like, hey, what do you do for a living? Oh, I'm in game development. Oh, that must be fun. You just play games all day. I'm like, yeah, that's definitely what I do. So yeah, that would be misconception, I guess.
Well, wonderful. Thank you for just sharing the story of Portal.
Yeah, of course.
And some of your thoughts around games and education. I want to encourage anyone who hasn't played Portal or Portal to do so. But if you're an educator or just somebody interested to see how did people create lessons out of this, do go to the Foundry 10 website and check out the lessons that they have posted there. Their table is, I think, that side, so you can actually talk with them today as well. They're one of the great sponsors for this event. But without anything else, let's thank Kim. And I will invite
Thanks for having me.
There's a bit of an order. The panel can sit underneath your photo or not. Confuse people. Go for it. It would make sense, but we can make it a puzzle.
Awesome. Let's have everybody wear masks. All right. Oh, and you made it. Yeah, well, that's fine. That's fine. You can have that one. It's okay. I'll grab that in the middle.
Sign seats.
Over here.
Putting Tom on the end. I didn't give you a photo. I'm sorry.
That's all right. I don't need a photo.
Let everybody in.
I got 2 drinks.
Yeah, look at you.
Oh no, look.
Never mind. Sorry.
I miscounted that.
That's
Your photo's so goofy.
That's your LinkedIn photo.
No, his photo is
Oh, your photo. That's a good looking photo. I don't know what he's talking about.
All right.
Photo?
I only have a.
I'm going to go ahead and introduce Tom, who will be running our panel, and he will introduce, or let everybody else introduce themselves.
Yeah, I'm not going to introduce anybody.
no, they're put up LinkedIn.
Here we are, Tom.
Passing it over.
Hi folks. If you've got to go to the bathroom, now would be an okay time. It's not a great time, but it'll be okay. Hi, welcome. We're excited to have this panel here. We've got some great panelists. We're behind schedule, so I'm just going to go for it and dive right in. Otherwise, I do a little bit more preamble, but who's got the time? Let's go. We're going to do 30-second introductions, and then we'll dive into the questions. Since sounds good to everybody. Everybody ready to go? Everybody got the cans open? Nobody's opened the cans yet. It's going to be loud. I'll be the first. But watch out. It got shaken up. All right. So let's just go down the line. We'll do a little bit of introductions, then we'll dive into questions. Starting with you, Becky. Take it away.
Hi, Becky Keene. I work with Digital Labs. We create immersive learning experiences for adults and kids, primarily in Minecraft.
Thank you. I'm Owen Craig. I'm the Director of Technology for the Nooksack Valley School District, way up north. I'm also the Director of Business Development for the Washington State Scholastic Esports Association and your local FBLA club advisor at our school. Here you go. Sorry, this is our mic. You get your own.
You don't want a microphone. My name is Zach Barth. I make video games. I ran a studio called Zachtronics. I work at a studio called Coincidence now. I taught high school for 1 year, and I guess you'd think that it was before the games, but it was actually like in the middle of the games, because I thought I didn't want to make games, and I realized I really didn't want to teach.
I am Marissa Urban. Over 15 years within the games industry. I've also done curriculum development for R&D and immersive.
He gets his own mic?
Okay, so my name is Trevor Wood. I am a high school English teacher at Lake Stevens High School, and I run our school's video game club and esports program. And I'm also with Washington State Scholastic Esports Association, and I'm the guy who just rolled in 5 minutes ago because I was like,
This is all planned. All right, great. So I'm going to kick off the question. This is just going to be an open question, so whoever wants to dive in first, take it away. We'll go through a couple of these. We've got a few questions for the panelists specifically, and then we're going to open it up. So be thinking about what you want to ask. I'd love for most of this to be audience questions. I just have a few to get the conversation going. Obviously, the theme of the event is classroom readiness. What does it mean? How do we define it? So when you hear the phrase classroom readiness when it comes to games, what does that actually mean in practice? Do any of you have like a ready-made definition to go with?
Student safety.
All right.
Also, student safety. I think one of the big things is the easier it is for teachers, the easier it will be for students to be able to adopt it. So a classroom-ready game, I think, something that nobody has to put any effort into to get the lesson taught. But that's also, I'm not a teacher, I don't know.
Student safety.
You got it.
I'll pass.
Yeah, so in terms of classroom readiness, I would say certainly student safety. There we go. Better?
Nice.
Great. So classroom readiness is a mix of student safety and also focus. So ensuring that the focus area that the development is wanting to be on is hitting the target, and a lot of that's through early stage testing and development.
student safety. And yeah, thank you. So for me, it's going to be probably two more bigger things though. I think the first one is going to be how difficult will this be for me to sell to stakeholders that this has academic rigor? And for better and for worse, I'm probably going to have to speak educationese to them. So I'm going to have to explain how it connects to standards, how it fits in the scope of the curriculum that we're teaching, and unfortunately that excludes a lot of games right after that. And then, like Owen was saying also, I just need as much control as possible to implement it the way I want in my classroom. So It can be save points and special admin save controls and things that I think most, I don't know, I'm not a game developer, so probably things that game developers wouldn't think to include that would for sure make my life easier, which usually comes down to the fact that my day is just hectic and I need things to always work for me and not work against me for me to even consider inviting it into my environment.
Awesome. Zach, if you have any, I'd be curious to hear from you, Zach. Hi. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Just on, like from a developer perspective then, based on what you've heard, is there anything that you think about with respect to games and learning?
So I mean, I never really I made games for classrooms, but like they were kind of proxied through a company, and the whole thing was a disaster, right? Like they weren't classroom ready, you know, in that like they didn't fit into, you know, like the 30 minutes a day that a teacher has with their students, right? Like it didn't really fit into that. And when I was teaching, and being on the other side of it, it's like, oh, I don't have time for games. Like at no point in the year I was teaching did I think, oh, I wish I had a game for this, right? You know, like when I had free time in some of my classes, because like they were just like open-ended electives and some of the students finished too quickly. It's like I'm like, yeah, I'm going to install Opus Magnum on these computers against district policy and like let my students play it. But it's like it wasn't because they were classroom ready. It was, I mean, they're safe for students, you know.
Obviously not, because if you're installing the games, then if you're installing the games, then it's not safe, because that's my job as the director of technology. You should be able to install it.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was lucky, I guess.
So one of the big, I'm just gonna yell.
What separates, so just, again, this is open and we'll dive into some more targeted specific questions, but in general, what do you feel separates a game that's educationally useful from one that's simply engaging? We've seen, like in the work that I've done in the past, we've kind of struggled with that a little bit. I'd love to hear thoughts on how you differentiate that and really drive at the core to make it educational from the start. Or that lesson is apparent immediately.
Yeah, I'll go. Kind of building on what I was talking about last time, for better and for worse, I'm gonna probably have to sell to somebody, whether it's my department head or whether it's an admin in my building or some curriculum expert at the district office. I don't always have a lot of creative control about exactly what I want to do in my classroom. So in order to inject something into their perfectly calibrated system that could certainly have no flaws, I have to make it such an easy yes as possible, and I'll do a lot of the legwork myself, but it really comes down to, like I said earlier, we're doing a unit about the hero's journey. This game specifically talks about that. I could connect it to these specific standards, and now I'm speaking the language that they want to hear, and I think they're more likely to go, yes, this sounds innovative and interesting and exciting, and educational, I'll give you the thumbs up. But there are plenty of games where I would struggle, I mean, I could try, but I would struggle to explain how it would tick those boxes, and I would be shot down pretty quickly if I couldn't effectively do that.
Oh, do we have an audience question already?
Yeah, I'll just shout it.
Okay, I was gonna come to you, but
I was just wondering, pursuant to that, what would be a good way for game developers to get a handle on that information? Obviously, that's why we're all here, but
Yeah.
what's your answer to that?
I was at a conference this summer, and I had a game developer ask me this question, and I was like, oh, there's Common Core State Standards. And they were like, what are Common Core State Standards? And I realized, oh yeah, we don't speak the same language. So I'm sure many of you know what I'm about to say, but I'll say it as if nobody knows what I'm about to say. I'm in a public school, so the public school curriculum, I teach 10th and 11th grade English, and they have scope and sequence, here are the texts we read, here's the curriculum that we use, and at the core, in theory, what it does is it ticks all these boxes of what are called Common Core State Standards, which are, it's kind of a dirty word sometimes, but try to attempt to standardize education on a state level. So a lot of states use these, although some opt out into slightly different standards. They're organized by grade, they're organized by subject. Every once in a while they're banded together, like 11th and 12th grade English standards are the same band, even though they're different grades. But for the most part, they're divided by grade. I think a game developer without someone who is there to do this very thing might kind of struggle to embed those things into their game, but I do think an awareness about it would certainly help. Like, I don't expect indie game developers to make curriculum that goes along with their game and how it connects to Common Core state standards, but if you did, that would rock. That would be so easy. If you don't do that, just make sure that it's not hard for me to make that argument myself based on those standards. And they're public, you can find them anywhere. CCSS, Common Core state standard.
So summarizing this whole piece, there's a kind of a controversy, I think, in the education gaming space where a lot of teachers feel that I'll call it ruins the game if we try to over-align it. And so there's a whole division on if we should be using games that are made for learning versus off-the-shelf games that align to learning. And those are two very different things. A lot of the games that are designed for learning, kids kind of see through that immediately. They're like, this is dumb, it's Reader Rabbit. Like, what are we doing? Whereas games that are designed to be off the shelf, that are designed to be engaging, that happen to align, are far better designed often. And I would say, to this point, that we as a company will get asked, game developers will come to us and say, as educators, can you help us with that documentation? And so they'll put on their website or in their notes or wherever, hey, you can also use this in education, and here's how it aligns. So they're building an off-the-shelf game to be engaging and to be marketable, but then they're working with education companies to help align them to however it fits.
Thank you. All right. I'm getting to some more specific questions here, and then I hope you all have. Oh, wait, we got a few hands. Just one. I see two. Yeah. Vigorously waving.
I can laugh. I'm loud.
I'll repeat it, so let's do it.
Okay, so I was a child development major when I was in college, first time around. And one of the things that we had to do was I had to take a children's media class where every TV show is rated EI for educational and informational, or it's not, but each TV channel has to have a certain amount of educational and informational programming every Saturday morning or whatever, like a certain percentage of their children targeted television has to be. Has there been any work in kind of standardizing what, like an EI type system? Because I know all the ratings for games are like E for everyone, but that doesn't help me in terms of like, is it educational? Like, is there an educational point? And has there been any work done on developing like a standardized system of like, this game is rated EI type of deal, and like here, like when you go to the website, like here are the standards, and every state has different core curriculum, right? So here are the educational cores that it can go towards, and like a kind of brief description on how it can do that, so that
Yes.
you guys can pull that.
So the question is there a rating system for the educational content of games?
Yeah, or has
Great.
there been work done towards creating something?
Does anybody know that?
You're not the first person this month who's asked me that. I think the answer is no. But I do know, I don't know if he's in here, but I know that Foundry 10 cares about.
Oh, you got Travis.
I know that Foundry 10 really cares about that question. And I don't know like what they are in the process.
They're on this side over here. Yeah.
I don't know how far they are into that process, but I know that they care that we want that information. I don't know what, I've heard like ideas about what this looks like.
Yeah, not
Is it,
Travis.
can we talk about it? Okay, so I've talked to Travis and he said that Foundry 10 wants to do some kind of multi-year research where they ask educators what it is they're looking for so that they can create some kind of database. I don't know if it would have a rating, but the purpose of the database would be to make it easy for educators to go, what is the educational value of this game? But as far as I understand, it's very much under construction at this point.
Excellent.
And I don't know if anything else exists outside of that, and I haven't heard of anything else.
We may come back to that. I'm gonna ask quick questions. I wanna make sure we're getting all the perspectives in here. So, Marissa, this is a question for you, and we'll come back to audience questions after this. So you work with XR. What is different about XR when it comes to classroom teacher and or learner readiness as opposed to traditional video games in the classroom?
So I've been on both sides. I've been the development side, and then I've also been the curriculum setup and classroom side, not publicly, but privately. And it's really interesting. The classroom, it's really about the setup, it's about hygienics, it's making sure you get there like in the morning so you actually have things stood up by maybe 10 to 12 o'clock so kids can actually do things. There's just a lot of components that happen. From the teaching side, there's a layer of complexity with XR that dependent on what you're teaching. So for instance, I taught headset development and they had to have a game by the end of the week, full stack, no bugs. And so by doing that, neurocomplexity becomes a thing where you actually want to have lists of kind of ordering of systems so that people can stay on target and understand clearly the expectations. So that would be the biggest call-outs for me.
Awesome. Does anybody else work with XR here? Or anything other than monitors and consoles or? Yeah, all right, cool. Thank you, Marissa. Oh, and I have a question for you as well. I swear we're coming back to the audience stuff. I'll hand you that. So you work with esports? Or have in the past?
Oh, yes, me.
Yes, you. What role does competition play in classroom readiness? How does that impact the usage of games within the classroom? Adding a competitive element, what does that do for the learning side of it?
I don't know, I don't teach, but I run an after-school program, and most of the engagement that we have, whether it be like Super Smash Brothers, the best part of Super Smash Brothers is they compete against each other to try and be the top player in our team. So with esports competition, everybody is competitive at some point, but also we focus at my club specifically on if you don't make the team, there's still other stuff for you to do. So I'm not coming from like a classroom standpoint, but I'm coming from you weren't the top 5 of the Smash Brothers players. Now it's time for you to learn video production or shoutcasting or marketing or something. So the game itself is great, competition is great, but I don't teach it in the classroom.
I don't teach competitive games in the classroom, but I have used games in the classroom. If you want to talk about that.
Yeah, how's that going? Good.
Well, I have to convince stakeholders over and over again, and every time I change classes, I have to convince them again.
Minecraft?
Yeah.
What about
Sorry.
Minecraft?
What about, yeah, say what about
Yeah, what about Minecraft?
So Minecraft is great. I don't know if anybody has ever heard of it. It's a little bit. They do Minecraft for education, which also is great if you've ever used it. Problem being, you can't really you wanted tools to be able to do the things. One of the things that Minecraft for education doesn't let you do is, this is probably not on topic, I apologize. What it doesn't allow you to do is not let kids play the game, because they can play it at any time they want as long as it's installed on their Chromebook. So there. Somebody fix that? Anybody? Because it would be great. What?
You're saying there's got to be somebody. But that's another thing. I'm jumping into.
I don't know if your mic is on, Jess.
It is not on.
Hello. Oh, I'm jumping into your panel already, but
That's
you're taking notes on things that educators sometimes wonder. That can be a challenge. Is some teachers want to use a tool, but then it's on the device the whole time, so that can be a challenge. Yeah. But there's different ways to mitigate that a little bit. To be creative.
I have a question. I mean, doesn't that mitigate the earlier point that you need to have it easy for teachers to access, right? So it's either easy to access or it's on the device all the time.
So I'm sorry, the question, because I only heard part of that.
Well, earlier, one of the points was, hey, if you really want to use a game in the classroom, make it really easy for teachers to access, right? But then the problem for my team, which is you,
Yes.
is, hey, it's on the device all the time. So which one is it?
Yeah. Absolutely. My problem isn't that it's on the device all the time. The teacher's problem is that it's on the device all the time. And the kids won't do anything but play video games all the time. So the problem isn't that it's accessible, because I would love for it to be on all the time. I want all of the students to play Minecraft for education. Minecraft is awesome. The problem is kids don't do anything but play Minecraft for education. So it's not a tool that is prohibiting me from doing my job. The problem with the Minecraft for Education is that it is keeping the teachers from being able to teach literally anything else, because that's all that the kids want to do. If they find a game that they can play, they will play a game, and they will not do anything useful. Cookie clickers have been blocked multiple times. We also block like all of the Google sites because they're all just hidden game sites. So yes, you are absolutely right. It does go against it because there's no way for me to allow teachers to not let students play, and it's never going to be in my world, it's never a classroom thank you, not a classroom management problem. It's a how come this game is available to students problem, and then it becomes my problem. So then I just say then it won't be on there anymore.
All right, so you, and then you. We'll start with you in the back there.
Quick one. Could anyone elaborate on student safety or?
So please elaborate on student safety. Was the
Becky, all you.
Oh, which part? I mean, SIPA, FOBA, HIPAA, all the acronyms. We want to make sure student data is safe, that their accounts are private. We want to make sure that they're not interacting with people that they should not be outside of their school system. We want to ensure that students' logins are protected, that they're not seeing things they shouldn't be. There's just a lot of concern in the community around, using a game that's server-based that allows kids to just interact with whoever. Anyone else want to add to that?
Especially with no, again, this is a problem I have with Minecraft for Education, is that if they are playing, anybody can join their server that they stand up. It's not just like, they can't just play by themselves. They can play and then other people can join them.
Other people in their school.
Other people in their school, yes, but also I don't want that to happen either, because kids are terrible. Well, in games. Wonderful people, love kids. They're terrible in games.
Yeah, Zach, you've developed some educational tools I found on your website.
I have.
Do you consider student safety at all as you're kind of building those things out?
No. I mean, so we consider safety in everything we do, which is that we try to keep the attack surface as small as possible because we don't have the budget to defend ourselves. So we just don't present anything that's attackable. So none of our games are multiplayer because we would just get crushed by real game companies if we did. So there's no safety concerns there, and what?
That does rule it out.
Oh yeah, exactly, right? And it's so we're safe that way. Yeah, exactly. Also, if we did that, no one would ever use it in the school because they don't have to go through the IT department, and this guy would be like, no. Yeah. So
I want them to play games.
Yeah.
I love games.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Great.
Period. Vance.
How much administrative support and/or assistance do you get?
How much administrative support and are you directing this to a particular individual?
Mostly the educators.
It probably just depends district to district. I think that 6 years ago, my district would have been pretty hesitant to consider anything. But with the success of our school's esports program and the community that it's created and the buzz, and I did my master's degree where I did some research on it, and I did a micro unit in class, and I invited them in. I kind of slowly exposed them to the idea that maybe this could be cool. But there are definitely some traditionalists who might dig their heels in, and unfortunately it's probably just going to depend location to location. I'm sure that there are some really open-minded, excited, passionate stakeholders in some districts, and there are some people that would, valid, are not concerned about how much screen time is being used, and we just bought this multi-million-dollar curriculum, we're going to use the curriculum, and you're not going to use something different. And then that person, takes the next level job, and this person steps in, and they have a different opinion. So unfortunately, it probably just depends on the specific group of stakeholders. Otherwise, we'd have a lot more standardized experience across school districts, I think.
Awesome. I made you a promise.
Yeah, I just want to share my opinion as a middle school game design teacher for years.
Yes, Mike.
Do you want a mic?
Well, if you're gonna speak a little bit, I'll just give you a mic for a second.
Use the student thing.
So I just wanted to share my sort of
thoughts as a middle school game design teacher for many years. And I used Portal. My take on it was like, let's treat the fair heights. So for me, it was a design tool. So I really appreciate that. So if I had a wish list, number one is like, if you're a developer, make a sandbox game, right? I can use a sandbox game to do lots of stuff because I can apply it in different ways. Number two, a game that has a level editor, whether that's Portal 2, Geometry Dash, whatever it might be, I can use that, right? And the third thing is competitive games. If it's an esports game and it's clean, I can use that for teamwork. So those are my wish list items.
All right, thank you. I saw we had a. Hi, Tim.
Oh, yeah, okay. We had a question in the back. Well, Jess has got him with the.
Hello. Oh, yeah,
Jess
great.
is doing microphone. Thanks.
Hi. This is kind of a question for everyone. I am curious about how you think about measuring the success of the educational encounter with the game. So I think everyone can answer this one across all the things. But yeah, it's just like what indicators, what kinds of things are you looking at? Are you asking survey type questions? How are you measuring the educational impact? Yeah.
Oh, so I didn't say in my intro, but I'm an educator background. Thanks, Owen. Taught for 15 years, I maintained my credentials. And so I have worked with kids my whole life. I would say that really depends on what we're assessing. So I could be introducing any lesson with any game to my students, and maybe my goal is that they're learning communication skills, and that's what I'm assessing at the end of it, and I'm observing that happening in my class. Maybe I'm teaching about fractions, and at the end of it, I want to know that my kids understand numerators and denominators, and I'm evaluating that. So I feel like that's a really open-ended question because it just ultimately depends on what I'm trying to evaluate and what I'm assessing, and whether that's formative or summative. And then is that observational? Is it through some sort of actual assessment? Is it a student reflection? Is it a discussion? Games, while incredibly powerful in education, should not feel like the other option. They're one of the options. So kids can be learning through a video, they can be learning through creation, they can be learning through an actual real world experience, they can be learning through a textbook or a worksheet. That's not what changes. What changes is potentially the level of engagement and also the level of possibility. And so games give us this opportunity to assess more than just a worksheet, right? I can be assessing what some people call soft skills. I call them just skills. Things like communication and critical thinking alongside maybe a content-aligned standard. Owen goes, you should be a teacher.
I'm going to sound like the standards evangelist here. I don't want to make it clear that's not what I'm here to do.
Pearson? Like, what's
No, it's just I live in standards land because I have to convince my stakeholders. Unfortunately, that's the reality of things. I don't have a lot of flexibility above me, and I have to speak the lingo to crack the code to do the cool things that we can all agree are better, even if they were unshackled. It's a game. I'm gamifying education. But standards things aside, I mentioned the master's degree that I did. I did some research, and for me, what matters is if I could show somebody that this lesson will land better if it's a game, opposed to what we're doing right now, then that is a massive win for me. And I mean, it's a small sample size, but I did something like that in a world literature class where I grounded it in a standard, because English is standards, and then we had to read Epic of Gilgamesh, which is so boring. It's so boring. It's the worst thing ever. And then I asked them to, demonstrate their understanding of a specific standard through a specific assignment, and it's bad because the text sucks and no one wants to read Epic of Gilgamesh. I don't know if that's a hot take, but that's my take. And then for my research, I had students collectively play the game Journey, which has to do with the hero's journey and could be easily connected to the exact same standard. I'm not the first person who's done this, I stole this from somebody else. And I did a pre-assessment, post-assessment, and it was just up. Every single person was up. And so I was able to show some actual data that said this specific standard improved when I stopped doing this and I started doing this. But also, to what you were saying, I also have tons of student reflections where they were demonstrating like a curiosity and analysis that you don't get with Epic of Gilgamesh because it's dry and horrible. But like, I don't know, I saw some people get excited when I said Journey. There's no dialogue in Journeys, and so students really had to be stretched to analyze literature when there are no words, and the language is visuals and controls and sound, and that's it. And like hieroglyphics that don't mean anything. And I suspect that their genuine analysis came from a genuine interest in what was going on because the medium was objectively better than Epic of Gilgamesh. So that's what would matter to me. That's how it's good. That's how it's better.
Right, so you got something to add?
Yeah, so I'll just take that word curiosity and pull it out and put it right here, because to me, curiosity and anchoring to focus are really core components. I do think there are two ways to use games, though. This is from my lived experience. I actually had teachers that use games as, hey, when you finish A and B and get it done, you can play this game. That was a really great motivator for my best friend and I. We finished early every single time so we could play games for the end of class. So that's one way I would also put forward. One of my favorite projects in terms of this combination was almost a Venn diagram of an educator guide, activity sheet, and game. And that was a nice balance because the activity sheet is for the kids. The educator guide, I was able to work with subject matter experts. This was a project for FHI 360, CDC, and others. And then the game itself. And so all of these things in parallel kind of created a holistic approach.
Awesome. Question in the back.
Hey, I guess I'll yell too. Oh,
Nope, no yelling.
Jessica, gotcha.
Thank you. Yeah, so I have a handful of friends that are also educators. I'm not an educator myself. But they said one of the biggest challenges of their job is actually not the students, it's the parents. And so do you foresee any sort of parental backlash, creating hurdles when trying to introduce gaming into a curriculum? Like anything that they would disagree with, or anything that you think that there's misconceptions, you know, like, oh, I don't want my kids to be nerds, or I don't know.
Read instead.
I mean, I think parents are critical about a lot of things in education today, and I don't think games are like special in that. And it's also why I think getting stakeholders on board is the best method. There are a lot of things at every board meeting in America where a parent comes up, brings up concern, and basically it's somewhat defeated by the recognition that like this is academically sound. We know it's sound because we've gone through our procedures for adoption, which is why I keep preaching about standards, because that's what I need to do at my school to get my stakeholders to have my back. But when I was talking about stakeholders, parents are also the stakeholders. It's also hard, I think, sometimes to argue with there's a lot of data and research. I can't just like put a research study in front of a parent and go, man, you're wrong and I'm right. But
Not yet.
I'm talking about standards again, so I'm going to stop. But that's what I was saying.
Hi, everybody. They watch movies in class, so like, why don't we just play video games instead? It's way cooler, way more interactive.
I think to Trevor's point, there's always going to be a parent upset about something, realistically. But I do think that the more we can involve all of the community in what we're doing, that is just much to our benefit. So for example, inviting students and parents and families to those esports competitions, making sure that there's a little video recap on the website of the school, making sure the school newsletter includes information about how kids are playing a game for learning. Like all of that upfront kind of proactive, positive communication that shows added value in the school day is incredibly valuable. Having families come in and really see the learned impact, having students talk about what they learned from a game, and all of those types of situations just really add to the shift in the culture that games have value. I think most families just don't want to feel like their kids are wasting their time. whether it's through a movie or through a game. And so helping parents understand the intentionality of including whatever it is in school is going to be really valuable.
Zach,
Yeah.
haven't heard from you in a bit. Is there anything you'd want parents to know about the games that you've made? Like if they were concerned about it, what would you want them to know about yours?
They can purchase them on Steam. They're too expensive. They're often on 50% discount on holidays. You can buy them in a bundle if you want to get all of them. They're probably educational. They will probably make your kids smart.
They're also really fun.
Some people say they're fun, but that's a controversial opinion. Yeah, I'm gonna go back for one thing. I was gonna say I found in my limited experience teaching that if you give all your students A's, their parents will all be happy with you, whatever you do. Yeah.
That here was great.
Yeah, we all had a lot of fun. Yeah. I mean, I guess not enough, but.
Can I get in there?
I got their microphone.
We got an answer.
With the people talk about education and gaming and it happening within the classroom. I don't teach, but I have a very robust program that is an after-school program. And with that after-school program, we have racing simulators, we have flight simulators, we have PCs, we have Xbox, we have Nintendo Switches. We have all these things, and I get kids that will get their grades up so that they can leave their class to come play video games in my area. They will go and they will tell their parents that they got to race a Ferrari at 240 miles an hour on this track because we have a racing simulator for it. There's a lot of opportunity for learning, and what I wanted to say was something about when we were in New York and Foundry 10 was doing a presentation on the amount of skills that kids learn through gaming that they don't realize that they're learning until they journal it and they get that aha moment like, oh, I already actually know about thermodynamics because I played a game that did it, or like a mod in Minecraft. And kids are getting these skills and learning these things that we don't really see as them necessarily learning until it aligns with something that is happening in the classroom, and a kid already has a greater understanding of it because they played a game that had that in it. And so what I try and do is provide this opportunity for students to play the games, mostly simulators, because you can learn how to fly, you can learn how to drive, you can learn how to construct, you can learn how to do all sorts of things with simulators. And those aren't necessarily things that align to your standards, but they definitely have a benefit for these students anyways. So if you make those simulator games, keep going. Let me know when you get some more cool ones.
Hi. I don't know if this is a question or a comment. I'm staring at Trevor. Because I've been doing this for 35 years. And I'm an educator. I've been doing tech ed since 1991. So I've seen all the things. And I worry about the standards piece, understanding that Washington State just changed all the math standards away from Common Core, renamed them, and added data science standards. So I'm about the learning, the games, having the game, and then it happened to have a learning curve to it, right? Like Minecraft. Love the way that landed out. But we do need people looking at the games and saying what standards do they match? What can they match? We just can't get stuck on Common Core.
Yeah.
And then the other thing was, in my head, I'm thinking about all of this, and I'm listening to all of y'all. And we need, if you're going to pitch to a district or pitch to, you need the KPIs. You need all those pieces. How are we going to measure these? Where are we getting the metrics from? All those types of things. And then, of course, I always have to bring in the equity. And I say that I always do. The equity, the cultural responsiveness, and if we're going into all the gaming, how do we ensure that all of that is also covered? Because those are the things that districts are looking at now, is it doesn't fit within our equity frameworks. Do these things matter? Soft skills, all that matters, but is that in the pitch you gave that we're looking at the social emotional learning skills and looking at the Washington State social emotional learning skills standards? All right, because there are 6 of them. I've had to teach them. So there's so many other things like we could be thinking about, like make the game, and then as educators, if we think that game is going to work for us, then we need to go with an education company and say, how do you help us do this? Okay? So we can't always say with the game designer thinking about that you thought you had an education game when you built yours, right? So how do we take it out of their hands and use it for what we need to use it for?
I would, yeah, I mean, the standards conversation is very broad. I hope that the takeaway for probably, I guess people who aren't educators, is that finding a passionate adult is oftentimes the first step to getting a game into a classroom. And then that passionate adult, that educator, has to go and do their own work, research, construction, pitch creation, and oftentimes there are, in order to make it past this next level, I have to speak their language. So yeah, you're right, the Common Core state standards specifically, like states do it differently, they're adopting, they're always changing and adding and tweaking. I hope that a game developer doesn't go, Common Core state standards is the Bible. I hope they go, I need to be thinking about the ways that stakeholders will want to hear this pitched and have that in mind. But to what you said, you can't just like build a standard game and be like, we did it, we made the game. It still has to be an enjoyable game. I think it was probably you who said it as well. It's like kids just see right through math munchers. It's math munchers. It's like
They'll play Cookie Clicker.
yeah, but they're not playing Cookie Clicker. They're just zombieing out on their screen because they'd rather do anything than the Epic of Gilgamesh. Anyway, yeah, I would agree with a lot of what you said, but I think that probably the most, I hope that I'm not the standards evangelist. I hope that I am the like lens into the pitch process that requires me to sell it to people who aren't passionate like me and don't understand that this tool is incredible. They have to have someone convince them that it is, and I have to speak their language to do it. Unless you're lucky and you have a stakeholder who already understands that, but that's kind of rare.
I think we got time for one or two more questions.
Let's jump in there just for a quick second.
Oh, yeah,
What you're
sorry.
saying, and I think all that stuff is what makes it impossible for developers, right? At one point, I aspired to make educational games, and then I learned what it was like. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to make games on Steam. I'm going to make games that I think are wholesome and accomplish something because it's so much easier, right? Like all the work that you have to do to bring a game to your school, and then what happens when you like retire? Right? Like how many people followed your research and then got the game in their school? Like maybe a couple if you're super influential, right? Like there's not a business model, right? Like the people we're competing against are like curriculum companies. We have an army of salespeople that are like basically lobbyists that get in the complex and can like sell everything to them on those terms. Like you can't compete with that.
Yeah.
Like just make Portal. Just make Portal, sell it on Steam, it'll be great.
I have sort of a specific and also open-ended question related to like access and integration into the classroom. It sort of relates back to the Journey example that was used. I was curious, like, how did students play that game? Did you have a classroom set of PlayStations? Were they running like this? There's no way that this laptop my students have to run Journey. So I'm curious, like, how you were able to make that work for your classroom, and then also on a more broad level, like how, because access to technology is not always the best for different students in different situations, like how are we able to better bring games to students no matter what their access to technology might be within their school district?
Stole my brother's PS3 so we could play Journey with my students, so that's one method.
Yeah, I asked the community for console donations, and one of them happened to be a PlayStation 4, and we had one. I think I technically had two, but I only owned one game. So, and I kind of liked it. I think I would have liked to have had everybody on their own system, but I also learned pretty quickly. We talk about like students gamers, and they are in 2026, but there's also so many of them that are not or aren't to the level that they are prepared to do a lesson where that's a thing. And so I had the PlayStation that was on my projector, and I just had one person piloting it once, and people who wanted to sit back and soak it in and experience it because it was different and alien to them, but they didn't want to touch the controller. That worked really nicely for them. And then students who just wanted to show off how amazing gamers they were, who aren't always the ones who thrive in my classroom anyway, it kind of gave them the front seat for a little bit. And then occasionally, if I felt called, I would prod a specific student, and I told them you could like touch it for 5 minutes and then back out. Like we did a lot of controller swapping, and I told my students to like watch the person, don't really advise, but once we start to get stuck, or if they ask for help, then we started to work together. I would have liked to have had more, but it was a good experience overall having a shared classroom adventure through one console.
So I would also say my experience, although a bit different. When I developed a game, it was actually developed for offline downloadable mode as well. I created activities that were gamified activity sheets that could be printed because I was developing for Indigenous communities, and a lot of them actually didn't have access to secure or consistent wireless. So really all they could do is download or print, put it on a thumb drive, and take it with them. So those types of things can also be accommodated if we understand as developers on the front end it's a mess.
The difficulty is that, like at the school I was, we couldn't download and run anything, so it had to be web-based.
Yeah. Student safety.
Yeah, student safety.
James,
Yeah.
Student safety.
A lot of our schools will set up like a station. They might have 5 PCs, or maybe they have a computer lab still for their CTE programs. That's career and technical education, for those of you that aren't educators. And so we're able to put higher end games on those devices. They're often funded through a whole separate bucket. CTE has its own budget in most school systems. And so that's something where, you know, a teacher who's really interested in using a game might be able to go to their IT department and say, I'd really like to use this game, could we put it on, you know, the CTE computers? It is helpful when games are more portable. So like that's why a lot of us, you know, Owen and I end up talking about Minecraft because it works on Chromebooks and iPads and devices. However, and like if kids are taking their school devices home, they know that they can log into the game at school and then play at home, right, as long as they've logged in. And so there's some of those like tweaks that happen, but ultimately comes down to a lot of teachers advocating for, right? They're getting grants, they're doing PTSA funding, they're getting Go Wish set up so that they're taking community donations so that they can set up those kind of higher end experiences. A lot of our students don't have access to a device that can really run some of the higher end games. So that, yeah, that's difficult.
Definitely can't run Steam games either, because that's going to require an account that's locked down. Not going to work. Yeah.
Can't run Steam on Chromebooks.
Yeah.
All right, folks, I'd love to take those questions, but I got to make sure we're moving along here. We are already 10 minutes over. So thank you all. Let's have a round of applause and panelists. I'm sure you'll be able to find and answer questions out and about.